How you doing? You good?
Nice to meet you, man.
Likewise.
So, where are you located?
I'm traveling all over the place at the moment because I'm launching my new book. So I'm on the road literally for the next 6 months, just
Okay,
in events all over California and then across Oregon and then across the whole of America to the East Coast.
right on, man. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into it. And, before we do, you have such a fascinating story. I'm curious, the last 3 years was quite a thing with COVID. How did you get through that? How did you get through that time period and how has it changed you?
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I think everybody's got an interesting COVID story. I think, as you know, it was challenging for everyone. I think most people have got difficult, challenging stories, and I think very few people have got like really positive outcomes that came from it. But I think we all learned valuable insights and lessons, and I think, I figured out quite quickly that all the journeys that I had done, I'd been pretty much isolated alone in really difficult, changing environments for long periods of time on a lot of my expeditions and adventures. So I try to use those tools and gifts to be able to do a whole lot of inspiring sessions with people on social media to give them tools and tips of how to get through difficult and challenging times in isolation and being alone and trying to stay positive and proactive through difficult and challenging uncertain times.
So, before we peel back the layers of your expeditions, I want to know right now what you're doing for a living, and I want to put you in front of a bunch of third graders, career day. One of the kids looks up and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
That's a great question. I haven't actually had that one before, and I've pretty much had every question that exists on the planet thrown at me. I guess I'd explain it that I'm a very unique individual by using really cool experiences and stories and adventures and expeditions and surfing giant waves and doing things that most people think is impossible to be able to inspire the people to go out and have their own adventure, live their goals, passions, and dreams, and never giving up on the ability to be able to make a difference, make an impact, and make the world a better place. And using your stories and your gifts that we are all given to be able to be a better human and be an example to others.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I don't know. In third grade, that was a long time ago, Joe. I don't know if you remember what you were thinking about in third grade. I think at that time I was just got into surfing and I was windsurfing and sailing a hell of a lot with my dad and sailing individually. So I just really wanted to use those sort of tools and skills and gifts to be able to become like the best at what I could be in whatever sport that I was really immersed in. And it seems like for me, everything was about being immersed in the ocean from a really early age. So I just wanted to become the best that I could be and better than my brothers. Seeing that both of my brothers were older than me, I wanted to outdo them. So I guess that helped shape me and make me probably a more focused, more resilient individual, and helped me become very determined and persevering and resilient. And I think those are all really valuable skills that I think we all could do more of within these days and changing, challenging times.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine a lot of those kids that you talk to in that third grade will probably want to be you because you're in the ocean, you're surfing, you're an adventurer. It's a fascinating tale. So I'm curious, what was kind of your trajectory to today? Did you ever have like a regular job, or has it always been in the ocean and adventurous? How did all of this kind of, crest into who you are today?
Yeah, Joe, I think a lot of people don't really ask that. So I think that's a really good caveat and sort of segue into understanding people. I think we often see people doing incredible things, but we don't realize the journey that they've taken to get them there. And also what was the sort of the catalyst or the spark to making those changes happen. And I think we all believe, I believe we all have sort of pivotal forks in our road that helped us and catalyzing moments that helped us make decisions to follow a certain path. And I definitely had a couple of those for sure. I ended up, I was running a lot of different bigger organizations and bigger businesses in South Africa and abroad. I was a sales and marketing director for O'Neill South Africa, which is obviously a big surf and sports brand. I was a sales director for Billabong South Africa. Then I went over to the UK and I headed up the apparel division for Gull International. And then I did such a good job there. They seemed to be so happy with what I did there that they asked me to launch the whole distribution for Gull International in South Africa. So I did that. And while I was sort of doing that, I think I was probably in my mid-30s. I mean, I'd still been doing a lot of the ocean sports, and I'd been surfing giant waves for a long period of time, but that was always something I did on the side. And then I'd finally broken through into becoming one of the better big wave riders in the world. I'd still, taken multiple different times to be able to get away at the end of the year, or any sort of time off that I could get, to try and get into a couple of the big wave events and then surfing them. And I was very fortunate when I started up my own agency, because I didn't have enough time as a full-time employee in the corporate space. So I started up my own agency as an agent for, I ended up looking after about 10 or 11 different sportswear brands. I had, 7 different showrooms and across 4 different floors. That was sort of gave me a little bit more freedom to be able to compete a little bit more. But I think I got to a point where there was one very unique specimen that I had to deal with as a CEO, as 5 of the 12 brands that I was looking after. And he was not a very pleasant, ethical individual. And I remember the one day he had done some pretty unethical stuff over the previous weeks with one of the employees that I was helping and supporting. And I remember him phoning me up on the Friday. We were just about to launch a new range for the season. And I saw his number come up on my phone, and I just had this really uncomfortable, really hot feeling like rushing through my body. And I remember looking at his name on the phone and just thinking to myself, I never, ever want to feel this way again. And I never want to work in a space and a place where someone makes me feel this way. And I thought to myself, no matter what I have to do, I need to change everything about what I do to be able to do more purpose-driven stuff and live a life more on point and on purpose, and following my own passions to be able to use my tools and my gifts to be able to lift other people up and hopefully help inspire and change the lives of others. And that was sort of my pivotal moment. And even though at that particular time, I was probably the definition of what most people consider to be successful in life, and having what, most people consider to be successful. You have the house, you have the cars, boats and money and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that that wasn't that important to me. And I remember going away that weekend and doing a couple of Venn diagrams and charts of what was important to me in life, where I was getting the most amount of joy, where I was getting the most amount of stress, where my passions were lacking, and my purpose for moving forward in life. And as soon as I laid it out in 3 diagrams, it became very, very simple. So I ended up actually giving half my business away to my assistant, who still runs that today in South Africa, and sort of following a path of more passion and purpose-driven fueled work, and ended up going over and competing and doing very well. Ended up winning the Mavericks Big Wave event in 2010 in the biggest surf in the history of the sport on borrowed equipment after traveling for 42 hours after almost drowning in my first heat. And that became an incredibly powerful story of courage, determination, perseverance, and the power of dreams. And that ended up becoming a book and a film. And then I started speaking, which was my greatest fear. I decided to just tackle all my fears that I had on land in the same way that I was tackling them in the ocean. So I decided to do the 3 things that sort of terrified me the most, which was to write a book, make a film, and become a motivational speaker. And then it all sort of went from there, because I didn't expect the book was going to do so well. It took me, 5 years to write the book, and I ended up getting turned down by every single publisher in the whole of South Africa.
Wow.
And then the only publisher that would actually publish my story told me that my writing was so bad that I needed to work with a ghostwriter. And then I worked with a ghostwriter for a year, and then just after, just before I finished, I thought we were finishing the book, the ghostwriter turned around behind my back and told the publisher that there was no point in continuing on with the story because there was no story.
Wow.
So obviously I was pretty shocked and irritated and upset about that. But I've always believed that everything is sent to you for a reason, and you've got to use it as, see the positive and the negative and the opportunity and the obstacle and everything. There's a silver lining on everything. And that really, when people tell me something can't be done or goes against what I really believe is true and the power of my convictions, then it just is sort of fuel and motivation to keep on moving forward. So I ended up going, well, actually, I know there's a story and I'm going to write it. And I spent the next year over and above, like working full time and all the stuff that I was doing to rewrite that story. I rewrote it over, I think, 27 times, got a really good editor involved. And we ended up, I phoned that the publisher up the day before I went to print, and I said, hi, remember, I'm that guy with no story. So I'm going to print and it's going to do really well. And she laughed at me. And 3 days later, we went to print, and it became the #1 best-selling book in South Africa, the fastest one to go to #1. It's been reprinted over 7 times and changed into multiple different languages, made recommended reading about 9 different schools. So
Wow.
I think, again, like everything that I sort of do in life, it's really about, being very confident within yourself, believing in yourself, and never taking no as an answer, and doing, like, taking daily steps and actions consistently over time, persevering and never ever giving up. And if you can do that, you can pretty much do anything in life. And I think a lot of people, when they don't succeed, they think that they failed, so they stop or they give up. But I think, I've always worked by the philosophy that there's no such thing as failure, only a failure to try. And when you don't succeed, you ask yourself one simple question, which is, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. So what did I gain from that? What can I learn from that to be able to make me a better, more rounded, more evolved human being? So when I do it next time, I can remove the block that didn't work, replace it with a new block, and keep moving forward towards that goal. And if you apply that principle to everything in life, the only time you'll never get your goal, if you keep on moving forward and keep on learning from those valuable insights, then the only time you won't get there is when you give up and stop trying. So if you know that, why would you ever give up and stop trying? Because you'll achieve anything. So,
and with that in mind, you've obviously become a role model and a hero for people. But who's been that for you? Who's been a hero for you in your life?
Who's been my greatest hero? I guess my dad was always a super inspiring individual. I always looked up to him. He died when I was about 21, which was challenging for me, I think, because I was only sort of getting to understand what an incredible human he was. I mean, I spent a lot of time with him sailing and surfing and what have you. But like a lot of us, we go through a very troubled time in our teens where we're not the best versions of ourselves. And I was not an easy teenager to deal with. And I think I was just starting to get through to the point where I understood that my dad was a pretty incredible human. And that's when he passed away. And I was actually there when he died, and I tried to end up resuscitating him. And unfortunately, even though I had a lot of experience in that and I'd resuscitated a lot of different people through life-saving and that kind of stuff, I wasn't able to bring him back. And I think that was pretty tough. But I think you got to learn that sometimes in life, no matter what you do, you wouldn't be able to change the outcome, and you need to let it go and move forward. Otherwise, that baggage will continuously haunt you. And I've been very fortunate that I've done some pretty interesting and inspiring adventures and journeys, and my stories seem to inspire and impact, thousands of people. And I think that's my greatest inspiration is the messages and the feedback that I get from people around the world through the books that I write and the talks that I give to corporates and people all over the world, and the journeys that I do where people are super inspired by my story and send me really positive feedback and messages of how it's really helped them. Those are the things that really inspire me. It's those kind of people, I guess, that inspire me to remind me that I'm on point and I'm on purpose and I'm living a life that has value and purpose, and I'm on point and on purpose with the best version of myself. And I guess the only other person that really inspires me, I guess, would be, the version of myself, hopefully 10 years time, which I aspire to be, which is hopefully a better version of the person I am today.
So speaking of versions, and you talked about your teen years, if you had a dream tonight, you ran into that teen version of you, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life, what would you tell that young version of you?
Stay on track, do exactly what you're going to carry on doing, because the version you're going to turn into 20 years down the line or 30 years down the line is pretty good, and it's going to be an incredible journey and an incredible ride. So hold on tight. It's going to be a roller coaster. Here we go.
The one thing about all of the feedback that you've gotten a lot of feedback, as you've mentioned, but is there one letter or one person that reached out to you that just puts a smile on your face every time, that really sticks out?
So one person that puts a smile on my face, what, every time I see them, or what?
Or a letter they wrote you, or some kind of feedback they gave you that you just remember that was really special?
Joe, what? There isn't one. Like I get a lot of really, really powerful and inspiring messages from people, and I wouldn't say that like they blur into one, but for me, as long as I'm getting those messages, then it validates the path that I've chosen, and then I know that I'm making a difference. And for me, it's really that's all that it's about. That's why I'm here. As long as I'm a role model for positive change, and I'm doing positive stuff that helps, being a catalyst to be able to help people on their journey, to take a better path and have the courage to be able to make decisions and be the better version of themselves, or make better decisions, or leave that partner that's been abusive, or get through a really difficult illness or a difficult physical or mental challenge. Like that's why I'm here. Like this morning, we actually launched the first ever limited edition Eco series all in book, which is the new book that I've done, but I spent another year and a half, 18 months, just creating 10 of these books. It's the most sustainable eco book ever created in the world, which is done with non-toxic glues, soy-based, water-based inks, a seed page built into it so you can plant it afterwards and turn it into Northern Californian wildflowers. It's got ocean plastic bottles made out of its cover, and the proceeds from it go to be able to build the first ever horticultural circular economy school that empowers women, uses the locals to be able to build a school. It plants 4,000 trees that gets planted by the kids in the community, and the 4,000 trees then sustain, support, and feed the entire community. And there's no other book on the planet that's ever been created that does that. And it's an example of positive change, an example of everything that I believe in, which is about using small ideas to be able to create enormous impact and create positive change and be a better human each and every day in some small way.
That's incredible. So as someone that clearly has an adventurous, exploring spirit, if you could go back in time and witness any event in human history with your own eyes, what would you love to have seen happen?
Shackleton, I guess, Shackleton's journey. I always look back at all the different adventures, especially like moving out of the big wave surfing realm into the expedition realm that I've sort of moved into, and looking at all those past explorers and adventurers who are really pioneers, and seeing, where some of them went right and where some of them went wrong. And I always take a lot of value researching all the explorers of our time, and the ones that survive and go through huge amounts of adversity to work out where their strongest values were, that got them through really difficult and challenging times. And then the people that came unstuck, that came close to succeeding but never did, and what made them come unstuck, what were the chinks in their armor that caused them to not succeed, and then learn from those insights in order to be able to ensure that I don't make those miscalculations myself in expeditions that I put together myself. I always believe in having a backup of a backup of a backup of every major system, and minimizing the risk so you can proceed with confidence, and then doing a pre-mortem on all my projects beforehand. So I've already thought through all the different worst case scenarios, and then have the tools in place, and have put in removed as much risk as possible, so I can proceed with confidence and know that I'm going to get a positive result at all costs. And I think that's really important. So it's learning from others, and learning from their successes, but also learning from where people had great challenge and have unraveled and caused their projects to become not the success they were looking for.
So in your life, you have this private and public persona, and at the end of the day, all these different people have perceptions of you: family, friends, fans, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I guess I'm a very motivated and driven individual that wants to try and be the best version of myself. It's really that simple. And that's what I strive for each and every day. I don't get it right every time and every day. I think we all have good days, we all have bad days. It's just how we realize that we can try and control that and manipulate it according to our physical mental state, and repopulate our mental space and our mindset and our attitude daily, and consistently work towards having a better awareness, a better frame of reference, with a better attitude becomes better perspective and better decision-making processes. So it's really about trying to make sure that I'm the most balanced version of myself that I can be, and I know what creates the balance. There's a famous saying by Rumi that says, "Know thyself." And I don't think a lot of people in this day and age really know themselves that well. And I'm very fortunate through my journeys and through a lot of the time that I spend alone on my expeditions, that you get to know yourself very well, and what makes you tick, and what makes you the best version of yourself, and what puts you out of balance. So I have a very strong self-awareness of that. So I try and make sure that I keep all those elements in check that keep me in a positive, proactive state moving forward, and keep me healthy and happy, because my job is to be the best version of myself when I'm in and around other people. So I've got to show up in that way, and include the ingredients in my daily life that help me show up at my best, which is a combination between being out in nature, being out in the ocean, or in and around water, being in exercise, being in sunshine, and having the combination between rest, nutrition, sleep, exercise, and then giving back, or whether I'm speaking for kids or whether I'm speaking for corporates, I've got to have my cup full to be able to give of that cup, and then be able to replenish it the next day when I'm getting exercise, getting out in nature, to be able to do that again. You've got to be able to fill your cup before you can gift of that cup to that energy and that positiveness to other people.
So if anyone out there wants to get the book, see the movie, learn more about what's that? Oh, are we good now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So if anyone out there wants to get the book, see the movie, learn anything more about your life, where is the best place to go?
Best place to go is probably Amazon for All In, which is the new book on the transatlantic crossing. I think on YouTube or Vimeo for Last Known Coordinates. I think Ocean Driven, which is my first film, is also on those two platforms. And then obviously on Instagram, or as Chris Bertish, or Facebook as Chris Bertish, if possible. Or just follow me on any of the other normal platforms, and you can get hold of me through chrisbertish.com or the Chris Bertish Foundation to be able to book me as a speaker for any corporates and inspired team. But that's where I roll.
Right on, man. Chris, this has been so cool, man. You're doing such good work for the planet. If we had more of you out there really making this a better joint for everybody in the future, it'd be so good. So thank you. Good on you. I appreciate you taking some time out today.
Joe, thank you very much. And all the listeners out there, live each day with the courage to try. Go out and have your own adventure. You never know what's possible unless you try.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, bud. Bye.
Good travels.